Next item on the agenda is Marketplace Redevelopment Project Phase 1B.
And Chair, I need to recuse myself. I live within 500 feet of the project, so I will have to step down for this particular item.
Okay, so this is the Marketplace Redevelopment Project, the FTP Phase 1B. I believe only Commissioner Donaldson was present at the time when the Marketplace PUD was approved. Commissioner Cardozo, were you present in 2008? I can't quite remember.
Yes, I was on the commission.
Okay, so, all right, so how...
It's myself then.
Right. So the way we are going to divide the presentation is I'll talk about the PUD itself, get you familiar with what was approved and how this FTP is going to modify that. And the actual FTP, the individual buildings, that portion will be handled by the applicant. So there's no repetition and it doesn't go on for, for hours. So in terms of background, in August of 2008, the City Council approved the Marketplace Planned Unit Development slash PDP, which stands for Preliminary Development Plan. The project included removal of the surface parking lots to create a mix of uses that included 674 residential units, about 180,000 square feet of retail space, and 120,000 square feet of office. The project was to be built in phases over a period of 25 years, so the build-out would end in 25 years. In October of 2010, the Commission approved the first FTP for the first phase of the Marketplace PUD, and this was the 93-unit residential building, which is currently under construction at the corner of 64th and Christie. What we are looking at here is the FTP application for the next phase, and of course, this is a study session for that FTP application. So this FTP application modifies the approved PUD PDP in 3 ways. First, it changes the mix of uses, and the way it changes the mix of uses is shown on the table. So there is a marginal increase in residential units, about 61 units more than what was approved. The office, what was approved was 120,000 square feet. This is being eliminated, and the retail is also being reduced to the extent of about 100,000 square feet. The second way in which this FTP application modifies the approved PUD is that it reduces the time for total build-out from 25 years to about 5 to 7 years. And the third way is that it changes the sequence of construction, or the phases. So I'll take you through the approved PUD, Marketplace PUD or PDP. So this is the phase 1 of that approval. And phase 1 consisted of, sort of 2 parts. This is the 64th and Christie, which is currently under construction. And the other portion of phase 1 was this building next to the railroad track. And this was a combination of parking, residential, and some retail along Shellmound. What you see in blue is what was supposed to happen at the end of phase 2. I don't want to complicate too many things. There were 2 options within phase 2, but ultimately at the end of phase 2, this is what would happen. The Shellmound would be relocated and realigned so that it creates a space for construction of this building, which is an office building with parking. Phase 2 also included sort of the construction of the 63rd Street. It also included removal of the UAE theaters and construction construction of a combination of residential, basically residential uses, and also the park, the expansion. There's an existing park, city park, and a part of this project included adding to that new park, and also a retail pad in the park itself. And the final phase would be this area that has been created as a result of the relocation of Shellmound, and that this would be a residential building with some parking and with some retail, and as well as construction of 62nd Street, which is right here. So this is how the phasing was. This is what was approved in 2008. Sorry. How do I go back? So this is the revised PUD PDP. This is being triggered because of their FDP application. And so, like I said, the phase 1 of this is what is under construction, 64th and Christie, and that's 190 units. And this is the phase 1B, and this is what is in front of you. The FDP application is for this phase. So a number of things are happening here. There's a realignment of Shellmound Street, as you can see. The construction of a parking garage, a 4-level parking garage with retail on the ground floor, and then construction of grocery store here and a small cafe or restaurant right here. In their phase 2, what they will be doing is constructing a building on this parking lot and making the connection with the bridge across the tracks. And this would be a residential building with some commercial. This phase would also include the park construction, which was at the same phase as the approved PUD. And in the final phase, you would have the UA Theater being built up with a residential building, as well as a building right here, and this too would be a residential building. And we would have the 63rd Street built out at the end of phase 3. So essentially what is triggering the change of sequencing is the fact that the UA Theaters, United Artists Theaters, have had the option of renewing their lease, and they have chosen not to do so. So that allows their demolition to occur now rather than later. And then what that creates is it creates a temporary parking area for the remaining buildings that are in the marketplace, as other surface parking lots are going to be seeing construction. So that is the main reason that is triggering this change in sequencing, and the fact that in terms of the project itself, it's a little bit smaller, it's a little bit shorter, and there's a change in mix. Mainly that office is now eliminated, and there's a slight reduction in retail or commercial space. So this is showing on the top, you have what was approved, and this would be, both these are at build out. So you can kind of see how the whole project per se looks like at the end. And this would occur 25 years from now, or a little less than 25, and this would occur about 5 to 7 years from now. So in terms of the current FDP application, so the way to look at FDP application is like it's a super design review. So first of all, you have to see whether it complies with the PUD, which is what I was trying to kind of explain. Does it conform to the original PUD? And it is not a straight compliance in 3 respects that I showed you. You know, there's a change in mix of uses, the duration of the build out is shorter, and the third thing is that, what was the third thing?
Phasing.
And the phasing is the sequencing of construction is different because of the UA Theaters. So what, in terms of actual on the ground that they are asking for your permission, is this phase, which is the FTP for phase 1B. So what that would involve, it would involve demolition of the UA Theaters and its replacement with a temporary parking lot. The second would be the relocation of Shellmound Street to the west. then that will coincide with construction of the parking garage with ground floor retail along the railroad tracks, and then a 20,500 square feet of retail grocery store. I'm not sure whether the applicant is ready to declare today what this grocery store is, but we don't have that information. Our staff doesn't have that information at this point. And then a small restaurant, a 1,500 square foot restaurant next to the grocery store. I'm not going to go into great details in terms of various buildings. I'm going to let the applicant work through that section. But this is kind of gives you, in a nutshell, what the site would look like. And this is a north-south site section. So this is 63rd Street, and this is the new grocery store that they're proposing. This is the garage that I'd mentioned, which is adjacent to the railroad tracks. And this would be the parking lot, also adjacent to the railroad tracks, which currently has the pedestrian bridge over the tracks. So that sort of gives you an idea. And this would be the plaza in between. These are just quick renderings, and I think the applicant is going to go in further details of what the parking garage looks like with ground floor retail. So these are the storefront windows, and this is the Shellmound elevation. And this is the grocery store and the restaurant elevations. So, and this is the main important thing that the commission needs to give direction in order for this project to move forward. In order to approve the FDP, you must make the finding that the proposed FDP substantially conforms to the PDP, or the Preliminary Development Plan. Staff believes that this finding can be made as changes result in development that is smaller in height and FAR, and the intent of the original approval was to replace the existing surface parking lots in the marketplace with buildings. And the buildings was a mix of housing, office, and retail. And this was to occur over the next 25 years. The revised proposal is to create, like I said, a smaller project, and with marginally more residential units, little less retail, but no new office, and also within the smaller time frame. You may recall the existing marketplace does have a tower where most of it is used for office other than the ground floor. In terms of DCC and staff comments, there was a concern regarding circulation around the grocery store. There was a concern regarding the site remediation and the possible resulting restrictions on development. And what this means here is that they are changing where the Shellmound is going to be relocated. So that opens up an area for building site. So that area which was currently under the road, is that clean or not? So that is something that will need to be looked into, and that's a possibility that we are sort of letting the applicants know that if there is contamination found, then they would need to get approval from DTSC to ensure that any uses that are being proposed are okay. There was a concern regarding the design of the parking structure, and this is particularly the east elevation, the one that faces the railroad tracks. Staff's view is that the railroad tracks should not be treated as back of any building, and that side of buildings should also be articulated and thought given, and not be an afterthought like the facade in Bay Street, that faces the railroad tracks. BPAC was generally supportive of the project, but it was unanimous in the need to have some kind of buffered cycle lanes. What they're proposing right now are share lanes, and they will talk a little bit more about that in terms of how the new Shellmound Street is going to get divided into sidewalk and travel lanes. They felt that the bicycle racks should be provided throughout the project area, and that all sidewalks, even if they're on private property, should function as public sidewalks. And this is easily achieved through, through easements that we would have as a conditions of approval. So the main issue to be considered is whether the commission finds that the proposal conforms with the original approved 2008 Marketplace PUD PTP. If the commission feels that it does not conform and that the original PUD PTP needs to be amended, then what will happen is that the applicant will go back and they will come again with an amendment to the original PUD PTP alongside with the FTP for the garage and the grocery store. And what this would do is that all PUDs and PTPs also have to go to the council. So any amendments to the PUD PTP has to go to the council, whereas the FTPs, the commission has the final decision over the FTPs. In terms of design, we request that you give us direction concerning the design of the grocery store, the parking garage, and their proposed streetscape and plaza improvements. Staff has hired Fair and Pierce to conduct a traffic report in order to assess that the Shellmound Street realignment works fine, because when the EIR was done for the PUD, they did look at the relocation and the realignment of Shellmound Street. However, the curvature has changed a little bit, so we wanted to make sure that a traffic engineer takes a look at it and makes sure that it will work and not create any issues, and also to look at the proposed parking and the circulation as well. Just to mention, the applicant has also submitted a traffic report, as they had to consult a traffic engineer as well in order to make sure that their design of the Shellmound Street does indeed work. And that was done by Kimley Horn, and Fair and Pierce will be doing a peer review of their study. So that concludes my presentation for now, and we request that the commission provide direction whether the project is in compliance with the approved PUD, PDP, as well as on design of the proposed buildings. So the applicant does have a presentation and will give you a detailed details regarding the actual buildings that they are hoping to construct.
Can I ask a sort of, this is kind of the reverse or flip side of the procedural question I asked during the last project. On this project, you know, I know it's an FDP that we're reviewing, but it's a revision to the PDP, and potentially, and you know, a little bit I feel like we're being asked to review which buildings go where and how the streets are laid out, at the same time as we're reviewing whether the garbage receptacles look up to par, because that's part of the package here. So just trying to figure out, you know, are we reviewing everything in this package? Because there's a lot of information in this package, and some of it's very, you know, very fine detail information, whereas the bigger picture could be in flux. And so it's just trying to figure out how we're supposed to respond to this.
I would suggest that you look at the bigger picture first, because if you find that what they're proposing, and it does modify the original PUD PDP, and just because it modifies does not mean that it does not conform. There could be, you know, I mean, it's a modification. So your finding is, do you think it is generally in conformance with the original PUD? If you feel that that is not happening, then we all go home, so to speak, and come back again. So that is the decision that you need to make, that are you comfortable in saying that the modifications that are resulting from the FTP to the PUD and PDP, if they are in generally compliance, then you go into and look at the design of the individual buildings, the landscaping, and, you know, and other details. And, you know, I mean, you don't have to, I mean, it is interesting. There are both study sessions, and the last one had fewer details, and this one apparently seems to be having a lot of details. It's just a result of, you know, how the developer team organizes their own team. So I mean, you're welcome to give me comments on, receptacles, but the idea is more on the bigger pictures. Because those little, compliance with, whether the trash works or not, it's something that hopefully you trust staff to take care of. Mm-hmm. But what we are looking for you is, even for the individual buildings, how is the design? Does that work? And the broader issues of whether the users, are you okay with that? Does that answer, sort of, maybe? No?
Maybe, yeah.
Miru, how much are we supposed to consider what they have put in here as full build-out? Are we just looking at Phase 1B as far as giving comments, or are we looking at some of the other details? Because there's some other elements that have changed.
Any elements that have changed the PUD and the PDP as a result of this FTP.
But the FTP is only for Phase 2B?
Yes,
So
the
we're
FTP is
not
only for Phase 1B. So if you have comments on buildings in Phase 2 or Phase 3, then this is not the time for those. But if you have
well, they're really showing you two things, two separate things. One is their overall concept for the whole build-out of the PUD. And even if they weren't showing you the FDP for Phase 1B right now, we need your feedback on whether that overall concept for all the phases is consistent with the PUD. And if the answer to that is no, then you don't even need to bother to look at the FDP for Phase 1B right now. If the answer to that is yes, then we need feedback on the Phase 1B design. And as Miru said, the details of the other phases, you can certainly comment on those now, but those will be coming back to you in the future as future FDPs, and some of those details might be a little different. Although, if there's something you see there that you think would be helpful to tell them so that when they come back in the future with that FDP, that certainly would be helpful.
Miru, maybe I missed this in your presentation, but what were the specific comments or concerns about circulation related to the grocery store from the DSC? Is that the right acronym?
DCC, sorry.
DCC, yeah.
DCC. The comment was regarding the surface parking, whether that would work or not, whether the loading as the trucks come out onto Shellmound, whether that would work, whether, let me just, I'm not sure I have. Yeah, I don't think I have the site plan for, so essentially it's the loading of the trucks, the way they enter and exit on Shellmound, and how people who are shopping and they want to park on the surface parking lots, whether that would work without any effort or not. And we didn't look too much into it since traffic study is being done, and then they will be looking at circulation to ensure that there are no issues, so.
Could you clarify for me one difference that I'm seeing in this plan is that 63rd Street is becoming a private road instead of a public street, and 62nd is becoming a private road plaza instead of being a public street. What are the implications of that?
Well, I mean, 62nd Street, it's now a plaza. It used to be a road.
Right.
And so, but that plaza, the traffic would be able to, the vehicles would be able to cross that, but that plaza could be closed for special occasions. So that is the idea. So it would still function as a road where vehicles could go through, and of course pedestrians, but it would also give an opportunity for, in the future to hold events, social events. In terms of the 63rd Street being private, I mean, it's all private property. To that extent, it will be private, but we would be asking for a public access easement. So they would, in effect, 63rd Street would, in effect, function as a public street. So it would be kind of like the Bay Street, right? The Bay Street is, the Bay Street is public. It's owned by us. The sidewalk is private. Yeah.
So when you say it was a private street, you mean in the approved PDP, right? There's no existing street there, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And as well as with 63rd, right? Both of those, there's no existing public
Correct.
streets.
So they're all driveways and they're all private property.
Right.
And Shellmound is a public street, correct?
Yes,
There would be some sort of land swap
yes,
occurring?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, one thing, I believe that it's mentioned in the staff report, but one thing to be aware of is that ultimately when this FDP comes back to you for approval, your approval, assuming you choose to approve it, would need to be contingent upon future city council action to vacate the existing Shellmound Street right-of-way and accept a dedication of the new right-of-way, and also to, to have the land swap occur.
Are we ready for applicant's presentation?
Yes.
Oh, actually, I have one more question, sorry.
Yeah.
So if I understand this correctly, looking at the comparison, or looking at the table in the staff report which highlights the approved PDP, in phase 2A, which is the phase that we're looking at now, is that correct?
No, 1B is.
1B is what we're looking at now. Okay, all right. So anyway, so in phase 2A, there was an option for office use and an option that was mostly residential with some commercial, right? So the only office that would have been required by the PDP is in phase 2B, is that right?
Right, there's only one office building.
Mayor, Mike.
The option 1 and 2 is more about when the UA theaters would go away. So if, the way they conceived it, that if the UA theaters left first, then they would build, they would use that as a parking lot and build other things. So it really depended on the UA theaters lease.
So they were committing to building 120,000 square feet of office. The question was just where it was located.
When it would get built.
And when it would get built,
Yeah,
okay.
when it would get built.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Commissioners, my name is Mark Steffen. I'm the president of City Center Retail Partners. We are an investment and development company headquartered in San Francisco. We specialize in the creation of mixed-use urban infill projects. We're very excited to be working with the commission and staff to build upon a process that started almost 10 years ago. And what we really are excited about is the opportunity we see to make the public market a true gathering place, a green living room, if you will, for the people of Emeryville and their family and friends. We think there's an opportunity here for us to create a real amenity, which would be a two-sided retail street that offers the residents an opportunity to grab high-quality food, to shop for unique retail offerings, and to just linger and hang out with their friends. What we want to create a real main street, one that works, not one that just does on plan, but actually works. We have experience in doing this, and we've given a lot of thought to what makes a viable gathering place. And there are a number of things that go into that. One of them is the mix, and we've talked about it, and we'll talk about it more, but it's a combination of the retail, the restaurant, the office uses, and the residential uses. Part of it is the density or the critical mass you need of retail and restaurant use. And then it comes down to traffic flow, ease of parking, being friendly to pedestrians and bike users, and then design, materials, landscaping. And we've taken all of this into consideration, and we think that we have a plan that we're going to present to you tonight that will meet those requirements, those crucial requirements, to make this a place that people will want to come, shop, eat, linger, hang out, and really be a place where the people of Emeryville can call their own. So right now, I'd like to have our architect, Aaron Ashley with Hart Howerton, come up and give you the details of the vision that we have for the public market.
Thanks, Mark. To your point, there's a lot in our package, and there's a lot to consider on a site that has a history in Emeryville and has a lot going on. So I'm hoping I can walk through it in a clear way for you pretty quickly, and feel free to stop and ask me questions. I'm an architect and planner. Ann Howerton, who's our firm's head landscape architect, is here too. So if you've got questions about that, she can jump up and field them much better than I can. But to jump right in, you know, we get to work all around the world and all around the country. And this is one of the best sites in the country, honestly. And it's exciting for us to work in our backyard. I live in North Oakland. My wife and I are here, boy, once, twice a week in Emeryville, shopping and dining. So I fully understand what it is that you've got here and the potential and all the years of thinking that have gone into this. We're just excited to get your feedback on what we've been thinking about and to understand, you know, from people who live here and work here every day, what you're looking for, what you like, what you don't like, and, you know, we can work with that. Mark and his partners know retail, and I think that's a huge advantage when you go into mixed use, is if you can control that ground 20 feet, the bottom 20 feet of every building, the potential for a vibrant urban place is so much better than if you know the multifamily business but don't know the retail business. And so, you know, I think we do have a leg up there. And so all of the concepts we're talking about have been vetted with the market. And when we say 5 to 7 years, it's because the market is eager in the next 5 to 7 years, or even 6 to 12 months, to make deals in Emeryville on the kinds of land uses you're seeing. The three big components, kind of beyond the PDP confirmation, is the realignment of Shellmound, what we're calling Parcel B, which is a parking garage of just under 600 cars, which really makes it possible to redevelop the rest of the site with ground floor retail in that building, and then a healthy, affordable grocery store to be named later, and a small cafe. We've been collecting feedback for the last several months. We see Maru and Charlie and company on a regular basis. We've met with BPAC. We've met with, I know Mark's met with some of you all, and we are taking it all in. We're studying things actively. What you're seeing here is what we submitted in October with a small refinement of the garage facades on December 2nd. And, you know, as recently as last Friday, we had a long working session with DPW about bike lanes and sharrows and street widths and sidewalk widths and how to dedicate Shellmound. So we're actively working through this, and we're excited to get your feedback and fold that into a next round. Maru did a great job introducing this, but just to kind of refresh your memory, the PDP was done on the entirety of the site, which included the UA Theater, which included the existing warehouse, or the warehouse buildings that have since been demolished, which includes an office building of 120,000 feet and 95,000 feet of retail in the public market. Mark and his partners now own the office building and own the public market and are breathing new life into it, as I'm sure you read in the paper. So we get to rely on those land uses as we move forward. The Essex building, which is not part of what we're doing, but is certainly part of the PDP, is under construction now, and that's 190 units. So when you read in your chart that there's 700 and some odd residential units in our proposal, those 190 units are part of that. So we get the difference. What we're looking at today is specifically this phase 1B, which the idea is this is the sort of armature that the rest of the project can build on top of. So the UA leaving with its 800 parking spot requirement made it really hard for anybody to do anything. So the 25-year timeline was in large part because of that. So without the UA Theater, there's an immediate need to create some parking so that the market in the office building can continue to thrive while we go about building Shellmound and building a parking garage. And then once you have those pieces in place, you can develop the surface parking lots and create that high-density urban place that everyone likes. And so that would be phases 2 and 3, which included the expansion and enhancement of that existing city park, which include a series of residential buildings, most of which was retail on the ground floor. And not just a little retail. I mean, this is meaningful retail that has 20-foot ceiling heights and 60-foot bay depths. And the effect is 5 to 6 story buildings over a multi-block area. So this is effectively the density of Paris or Amsterdam. And so you've got a high density walkable environment. And I think that's a pretty exciting core. Yeah, it's a little bit smaller than it was, but it's still a very high density place. A quick comparison of the PDP to the FDP proposal. The squint test, everything is generally in the same place. One of the pieces of the PDP that is struggling in the current market is there was a single user of 100,000 square feet of retail space, and that was on what we're calling Parcel D, presumably a large format retail establishment. So that is the big difference on the retail side between the numbers that we had in the PDP and the numbers we're proposing today. The other big difference is the lack of office. And again, I know that the office tower is struggling to be leased, and so the office demand isn't there yet, and we're working around that and trying to create a place that's really desirable for office. And so that's part of what we're doing. In terms of circulation, all the same roads and pedestrian passages are present in our plan as we're in the PDP, in all the same locations generally. The one thing that we're trying to do is actually enhance the amount of pedestrian connections across Shellmound and make Shellmound a slow street that people want to cross on a regular basis. Looked at it in a different way, this is the drawing on the top is from the PDP, and below is an illustration of our proposal in the same hand. All the pink boxes are bike racks spread throughout the project. We're proposing to expand the park and for it to be the same size as was proposed in the PDP. The difference being we think a retail piece in the park doesn't function as well as a retail piece plugged into the market. So we've moved it out of the park to the other side and made it part of the retail environment. Just as if you sort of treat the orange on the screen as high intensity pedestrian areas, from the proposed grocery store to the far south end of the site, it's about 1,050 feet. That's a great shopping district street. I mean, you know, that you go around the world and you look for great shopping districts, they're 1,000 feet long. So this is no small project. To take Maru's numbers and maybe spin them a little different way is as you add in what's there now and the kind of the existing realities of the site. Today there's 120,000 feet of office at the public market and there's 95,000 feet of retail. As you layer in another 75,000 feet of retail and a number of multifamily units, you get this vibrant place that's active 7 days a week. What's exciting about this is it's very much mixed use. It's as mixed use as any city. And those retail and food and beverage establishments are small footprint. So the major user in our proposal is a grocery store of about 27,000 feet. When compared to that major user before, which is 100,000 foot, you insert the name, this really will feel more like that Main Street character that we all like. So we see this as a positive. The first piece is the realignment of Shellmound. And not to be endeavored lightly, the building Shellmound the first time I think was a challenge. The kind of history below the ground in this part of Emeryville is pretty daunting. We know it full well as we've engaged a consultant team that worked on the market in 2008 and has worked in Emeryville extensively. So between the environmentalists and the civil engineers, we seem to know what we're getting into. At the top of the screen is the existing alignment of Shellmound in red and what we're proposing in yellow. In terms of square feet, it's actually more. What's in yellow is more than what's in red. Today, the city owns Shellmound, the road, and 18 inches beyond the curb. And we're talking about a deal that would, you know, more than equate to that and also give public control of the sidewalks. And so the terms of those deals are getting worked out now, but it seems to be an interesting discussion. The idea that's really guided us is how is this a complete street? How is it not just a mover of cars, but something that pedestrians and bicyclists and people just want to be at, accommodates buses. And so fundamental to that is it moves pretty slow. And the bends in Shellmound really facilitate that. As we've gotten into this and we've thought, well, how do you take a traffic mover and prioritize bicycles and cars? One of the ideas we had was a Sharrow. What we've drawn in this illustration, and so this is kind of northbound on Shellmound, the Guitar Center's on the left, the parking lot and the pedestrian bridge is on the right, and you see a bus stop and a kind of a new bus pavilion, and the parking garage beyond. And so the idea being, as you come into this great district, the pavement changes, the landscape changes, you get great street trees, and you no longer have sort of a bike in a Class 2 bike lane. We give them the power of a car, and they can pull in front of a car and have a Sharrow. This hasn't been a terribly popular idea as we've previewed it with folks, and so we've been actively studying alternatives. And one of those alternatives is what Shellmound is shown today as a Class 2 bike lane, and that's a bike lane separate from cars. And so we've talked through that, and we're still working on that. So we fully expect to come back to you with changes like that and other ideas. As you get into Shellmound, and again, this is a very urban character, and this is what was anticipated in the PDP. You've got the existing office building on the left, you've got the parking garage on the right. We're looking at different elements from your Shellmound design guidelines and other documents, like parklets, like street trees that break up parking bays, you know, enhanced pavement, enhanced lighting. And so all of these we're trying to wrap into this great environment that really prioritizes people. I mentioned the guidelines. They've been a real guide for us as we've gone through this. So your Shellmound guidelines are on the left. It's a great document that really does a good job of saying this is a place for people and how do you prioritize people in it. This is an illustration we particularly liked because it said that instead of having stretches of on-street parking, which we know is critical for retail, and then trees sort of sandwiched up against the building, we can get the tree out a little further, let the canopy get a little bit more space. And so that clear pedestrian zone with room in front of the building for furnishings and other signs and so forth, we're maintaining. This is another illustration on the left from your guidelines that we particularly liked. And so as you can see in the illustration on the right, we're trying to emulate that and put it to use. On the landscape side, you know, for our entire team, and our firm is architects, planners, and landscape architects, and I think it's matched well with Mark and his group, because these real authentic urban places only work if you have a high quality urban landscape. And that means it's coordinated, it has big trees, those trees are given room to grow, and we know all the challenges that go into this. And so this isn't a proposal that says we want big trees and then we go and get little trees. It's a commitment to 2 dump truck loads of dirt to excavate toxic soil and bring back good soil for every tree we put in the street. So we know what we're getting into, and it's frightening. But it's also an exciting opportunity to really create this authentic place. These are photos from around town. I'm sure you recognize them as you drive around. I guess one's from 4th Street in Berkeley, where we got a little further afield, but there's certainly a challenge to grow healthy vegetation in Emeryville, but it's been done successfully. We've looked at a couple of street trees that we think have the kind of character we'd expect, whether it's the London plane or the Chinese elm. But this entire palette we expect to put to use in the marketplace, and our proposal to date has focused more on the street trees and less on the ground plane, but you know, I think that's the next level of iteration once we get into this with you. Everything is a workhorse on a site this urban and this intense, and so we're working with civil engineers and our team to really understand how do you use biofiltration planters, all the LID systems that you all know about, but quite frankly, we're asking of ourselves how to treat every drop of water that falls on the new buildings and the new roads, and so it's a challenge, but right now that's what we're designing to. A big piece of this is, of course, the public furnishings. And having a coordinated, attractive public furniture and amenity package from fences and bollards and bus stops, and of course these are indicative of a direction, and we'd love feedback on the trash can, but we're also happy to just kind of keep pushing along and hit the bigger issues and also come back to something that, with the reassurance that we're thinking about this holistically, and it won't be one of these and 3 of these and 2 of those. It'll be a coordinated, attractive place. Parklets, I know, was in your pedestrian guidelines, and they're a lot of fun in San Francisco. We think they're the vibe that we want to showcase here, and they're the kind of tenants we're going to have here. If you think of Urban Outfitters as a prototype for who'll be at the public market in the future, parklets are kind of the cool thing, and they're nice because as you monitor usage patterns, as tenants change, you can sort of pick them up and move them down the street, and the character of this place is allowed to evolve in the way that a real urban street evolves. It's not like a shopping mall where everything feels, you know, orchestrated and coordinated and a big brother looking over you. On the ground plane, we're getting into how do you showcase this district as something special, and whether it's specialty paving in the street, which we've floated and are talking through with DPW. It's the LED flashers in the raised crosswalks, again, prioritizing pedestrians. It's the improved lighting. It's the Plaza Street, 62nd Street Plaza Street, which has, you know, flush paving with a kind of cobble. So it has those high touch areas that really gives it a kind of a special district feel. And again, it all comes back to this idea of a complete street. How do you create a place that is as much about people walking, families hanging out, cars driving, bus stops, parks, lingering, hanging, shopping, eating, and that's really what we're going for here. And I really think that's consistent with the direction of the PDP. Second piece is the retail garage. The site now has about 1,000 cars on it, and we're expecting to need less than that, but we're trying to find a home for those people that want to come here, and understanding that we're making provisions for bicycles and buses, and we're checking all those boxes. This is the ground floor plan of the garage, and just to give you a sense of scale, it's 2 parking bays wide and about 450 feet long, so it's about 450 feet by 122 feet. It's not a small building. It's about 200 feet shorter than what was proposed in the PDP, which was really not a small building. In blue is the retail. There's about 10,600 feet to the north, 11,700 feet to the south. It's all 55 to 60 foot deep. So the typical shop could be 1,500 feet up to about 3,500 feet. So again, small format, unique retailers. In the middle is a bike parking room. There's bikes accommodated all through the site, but we wanted to have a dedicated indoor place for employees and visitors. In yellow in the back is parking. There's a drive aisle, kind of a ramp from both ends. So we've got 2 ins and outs. That whole back area is service, deliveries, and the idea being that you're really forcing all the back of house uses to that area. There's also a small amount of employee or short-term parking. As you jump up a level, the kind of typical parking level, and there's 3 of these, the typical parking spot is 8.6 by 18 with a 24 aisle. So no columns. So when you think about some of the challenging garages in this town, this is not one of them. This is made to be efficient. It's made to be easy to use. There's 3 vertical circulations that link to different parts of the property, so that if you work in the office building, you can park close to the middle one and you're right across the street. Again, to make a retail place work, it's got to be easy. On the skin of the garage, the retail will be very vibrant and vital and active, and a mix of uses to sort of conceal the cars, but not make them disappear altogether, so it's clear to find out where you're going. We've looked at a series of great materials like louvers out of metal, wood, and sort of other things like wood as we get into it. Glass and fritted glass. Metal screens that may have a shimmer to them. The idea of introducing a living wall in a limited way. Again, trying to tie tenants a little bit to the fenestration of the building. So you've got an interesting character, and you've also broken this thing up over the length of it. These retail bays are generous. They're 17 feet high on one end and 22 feet high on the other. So this is a great pedestrian shopping environment. Again, the kind of materials that we'd expect for this building and the grocery store. And if you're out at the public market today, to your point earlier, the best parts are the old brick, and the worst parts are the bad stucco. And everything we're doing is to have more brick and kind of more of the cool materials and less of the stuff you see every day. And I think as you drive around the old parts of Emeryville, that's what really jumps out at you. The rear of the garage is certainly a challenge. We think that we can take advantage of the kind of the extra dirt we've got on the bottom of it and train up some pretty interesting vegetation. We get a lot of light over there. We've gone from the standard concrete rails to a more enhanced open metal rail, so this will feel open. It'll be more attractive than your average garage. There's no kind of gimmicky graphic ploy. The north and south elevations sort of tie in to the whole thing. And again, the whole thing is like, how do you get this great pedestrian character that everyone gets to experience because it's now this great kind of civic street? And how does this become the great environment that everyone wants to hang out at? The last piece is the grocery store and cafe. There's a, as we've learned, there's actually a very clear market for grocers in this city. There's a lot of demand from a couple of very high-profile groups, and we think we're zeroing in on a very interesting balance between sort of healthy and affordable, and I think it could be really cool. The building has to sort of keep pace with that, and so we're looking at a building that terminates the view as you drive down Shellmound. So it's very much an urban building. It has a 27,000 square foot or so market, of which there's some back of house, an enclosed roofed service area, so you won't have the open trash bins or the trucks. It's screened in. There's about 22 spaces on the ground floor and then a ramp up, and the balance of the parking be on the roof, 115 spaces. The architectural feature is this vertical stair elevator tower that you saw in the first rendering that would link from the parking level down. Even a little green roof on the cafe. That 62nd Street Plaza in the PDP was just east of the building, and we've shifted it to the south because we think if it kind of borrows with the energy of the public market, it'd be this great sunny space for lunch and hanging out and festivals. And so, yes, it's a private street that can be closed off from time to time, but the idea is it feels like an old plaza that you can just set up for a variety of activities. In terms of the elevation, we think that there's a chance to sort of borrow from the brick, not the brick veneer, but the good reclaimed brick, to really echo what's happening on the Marketplace. Complement that with steel lintels and steel awnings and a little bit of wood, and again, a nice kind of high quality storefront material. And the other sides of the building would not be backs necessarily. You still keep use of the brick. You still use a lot of wood louvers, and you really ask a lot of vegetation because we got north and west faces that we should have some luck with. And so that's a summary of where we're at and a little aerial of what it might look like at build out. Again, kind of echoing the high density character of everything around.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Can you go back a few slides and explain to us very clearly the where the loading dock and
Yeah.
would be for the grocery store and that kind of?
Yeah, so we're studying, so this is the loading dock, and the roof of the parking garage is up above. And so there'd be a full screened gate here and here. And this is the ramp up to the parking above. So we're looking at two options, and again, we've got different versions, but you'd either load the trucks from southbound on Shellmound in and they'd back up, and they do not need to go into the road to kind of do that move. Or you can come up 63rd Street, and the reason this is hatched is because they need just enough room to turn in and do the same maneuver. Coming out, we're working with the geometry of all of this so that the truck can stay within its lane, make that turn, and exit southbound on Shellmound. So that's what we're trying to do.
Is there a reason the sort of the loading dock location and the ramp to the roof parking location couldn't be swapped?
You're not the first person to ask that. No. It's one of the things we're studying. When we listed out our priorities, the priority number one was this facade here being a continuous high-quality facade that everyone that drives north on Shellmound sees. And the second was how do you get people into this? And it's quite easy to come south on Shellmound or north on Christie or south on Christie and come up 63rd and up and park and come down. The trucks, it's just about finding an intuitive place. And so we felt like the side north, most adjacent to the train tracks was, least offensive to future residents who are using the park and other places. And so we kind of pushed it up to the north.
One more question. So the 22 surface spaces,
Yeah.
Are those needed towards your total, the total parking requirement for this grocery store or the site, or is there some other need for them?
Parking in general, we're trying to balance your very progressive parking code and leases and tenants that are already in place. And as you can imagine, grocery stores have requirements that need to be dealt with. This parking's actually underneath a roof. The parking garage above comes over, and then there's a metal screen with some vegetation. So it's there as a convenience. It's there to meet a total number that we're trying to hit for the grocery store. That's the short of it. It may be shared with the cafe also.
Could you describe a little bit more about this cafe? Because it looks to me to be much more of a kind of, that's what the parking's for, and it's more of a little bit kind of fast food restaurant-y feeling to it at this point from looking at it and where the parking is and, you know, like Starbucks-y kind of thing, so.
It's not going to be Starbucks.
You know what I'm saying? That because the parking's right there and there's a standalone restaurant, it just begs to be explained.
Absolutely. Again, the graphic is deceiving. If I go forward, you see that that's all under cover. So it's structured parking that happens to be at grade. The cafe might be a wine bar. It might be a small takeaway like the Gott's at the Ferry Building. The idea is not that it's a full-service restaurant, but we quite frankly don't know what it's going to be. But at 1,500 feet, the options are pretty limited for what it could be. We think it's the cool place to grab lunch and hang out at the plaza, or the cool thing that draws you down the alley from the public market that complements the kind of stalls you see in the public market. I realize in this illustration it looks like a fast food restaurant with a parking lot and a drive-through. It's not.
Well, there was also the traffic study talked about it in that way too.
I think the traffic study alluded to some complexities we're having, which is traffic gets stacked on Shellmound if you can turn left into the plaza, and a few other issues that we're working through now. As is drawn, this is a two-way street, the plaza, that might be not a street 3% of the time. I mean, I think it's one of those things that Saturday mornings, once a month or once a week, it's a plaza, and the rest of the time it's a street. And then just, I think there's questions, as of course you can imagine, as you try to draw a pedestrian environment with bullnose curbs and bump outs, you necessarily struggle to get trucks and cars and everything to move around. So we're working through that actively with both traffic consultants.
Any further questions?
Can you speak to if there were to be office space in the future, where that might be located?
Might ask my partner in arms here.
If there were to be office space, it would be located above the parking structure. The difficulty right now is we have an office tower that's roughly 100,000 feet. Mm-hmm. We have one floor that's vacant. We have another tenant is basically vacated the premises, and another one that's going to be vacant. So we're going to have essentially 30% of that building vacant. We've been marketing the space for over a year, and while there is a tremendous amount of demand for office space in San Francisco, it is because the companies want to hire the employees where the employees want to live. And they're focused. So our goal here is to create a place that this is where they want to be, and they want to come here and hire. But right now, the employers are not coming over here at rates that our rates right now that we're charging, that we're not getting tenants for, are well below what it would take to have even a substandard return on the cost of new construction. And the other thing is, I don't think that the office space adds to the mix that we're trying to create. We already have 100,000 feet of office space, and the way that the market is changing, the use is a lot denser than it was 5 years ago, so you get many more employees per 100 square foot of office space than you did 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Could you also be like really specific, because I know you said it's a different kind of one,
right,
like a retail environment,
right,
that how does this differ, say, from the Bay Street, which really is a mall?
Exactly, and that is
really specific.
Our focus. I'll be very specific. Our focus has always been, we're anti-mall people, and we like urban retail because we don't like malls. And what we want to create here, and why we were originally attracted to this place, is the opportunity to have unique retail, small retail. So we're talking about from the food component. We've been talking to chefs, well-known chefs, well-regarded chefs around the Bay Area to come and open up either small food stalls or 100,000-foot restaurant spots so they can showcase their award-winning food at approachable prices and approachable sizes. So we're looking for units that would be one-of-a-kind kind of food purveyors. From a retail point of view, we're looking for folks that are unique, 1, 2, 3, 4 outlets, or they might be somebody like if we had any others, it might be a Steve Allen, who maybe has, 5 units across the country. People that are unique. So this will be a location you come to, and it's going to be, you're not going to be on Bay Street. Well, if you go to Bay Street, you could be anywhere in the world, or at least in the country. If you come to Shellmound, you'll know you're at Shellmound because of the unique tenants that are there. And that's what we're going for. That's what we want to achieve. We're not, and you're worried about the cafe. I can promise you it will not be a unit that...
I figured it wasn't.
Yeah.
I guess I was baiting you, sorry.
Yeah. No, what we're going for is we need this unique environment. It really is a combination of the finishes and the way it lays out, the way the traffic moves to make this all work. And the type of tenants we want, they're very selective about where they will go because they want to protect their brand, and their brand is about uniqueness. And these are tenants that aren't found in a mall, and that's what we're going for.
I want to follow up Commissioner Coomerly's question with another question about office uses. I don't know a lot about different types of office uses, but I know there are a lot of different types of offices that have different demands and have different levels of rent. And I'm just curious because there seems, just on the other side of the railroad tracks, there seems to be a tremendous amount of office space, that seems to have higher occupancy rates than what you're describing in this tower. And so if you're
Sure.
familiar with that, if
I
you could
am.
address the differences.
I am. That 2 years ago, that space was about 65% occupied. It's right now about, I think it's 85%. Their rates that they've been leasing the space at has been about anywhere between $2.40 to $2.60 a square foot.
Which property are you talking
You're talking about...
Wareham Properties?
No, you're talking about across the freeway?
Across the railroad
yeah.
tracks.
Oh, you mean, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about across the freeway.
No.
Okay. They are occupied. I do not know specifically about Wareham's properties across the railroad tracks. Those are also lower density, and my understanding is that he has one property that was built about a year or two ago, and I'm not sure what the occupancy is on that.
Well, they're special use properties.
They're also
Yeah,
special use.
Offices.
Restaurant.
Right.
Just so the commissioners, I think Mark is referring to the Emery Station Greenway building, and it's where the Bureau restaurant is.
Yeah.
That building is currently vacant. There are no tenants, and it's been vacant for at least more than a year.
Interesting.
Could you also mention some of the options that the DPW had for the bike lanes besides the Sharrow?
Yeah, the other two options that we discussed when we talked to BPAC, is that what you're talking about?
No,
Or-
I heard that you met also with DPW and...
we did, and maybe I'll let
Yeah.
Aaron talk about that.
Thanks.
We were at BPAC together too. Consistent recommendations on both, and I just jumped to a spot on the
Consistent
site.
with BPAC, you're saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
DPW and BPAC. I think they had the same questions and reservations, but effectively a class 2 bike lane is 5 or 6 feet on the side of a drive lane, and if you have parking on one side, it kind of affects that a little bit. And so with DPW, we talked about getting to a 6-foot lane and an 11-foot drive lane, which is consistent with what Emeryville has, or Shellmound is today. That gives you the flexibility to ride side by side in a bike lane or pull away from the parked cars. And so that's what we talked about. Details of that is also kind of exactly the geometry of the S-curve in Shellmound, and making sure that there's not conflicts between buses and bicycles. With cars and bicycles, it's not a problem, but with buses and bicycles, and knowing that we want this to be a transit corridor is just to sort of work that out. So again, the sort of holistic study and evaluation we're doing with all the various folks and reviewing with DPW is to just get that tuned so that everyone's comfortable, that there's no conflicts.
Well, your prior plan had a separate bike lane.
The PDP?
Yeah, the prior approved plan. I mean, the whole street is wider And it looks like you had to make the building along the railroad tracks deeper to accommodate the parking, and that pushed it into Shellmound, squeezed it down.
Yeah.
And, you know, I understand that there's angled way of parking, 30-degree parking, which is actually more efficient, and it would be less deep. I don't know if you've looked at anything like that.
We've looked at a
Steep and
big range
parallel.
of parking solutions.
Charlie told me.
The PDP, the conditions of approval of the PDP is, as I understand it, Class 2 bike lanes. And if you do the measurements described in there, it's a 6-foot bike lane going each direction with a 10-foot travel way. So what we're looking at is increasing the travel way for cars to 11 feet to kind of further add safety and just lessen conflicts. The maps are a little, I think, misleading, but that's the, I mean, we'll continue to dig through that, but that's what I believe the conditions of approval are.
Look at your plan. So the April 2008 plan appears to be much wider. It has pullouts for the bus stops and clearly delineates separate lanes, whereas the your newer one doesn't.
Is Shellmound, this stretch of Shellmound currently a bus route?
Yeah.
Yes.
And, oh, for the Emeryville round or for AC Transit? So only Emeryville
No,
round?
there's an AC transit.
There's an AC Transit also. So do we know, can you speak towards the frequency of the existing transit service?
Infrequent, but we're speaking with them. I don't know.
I think the Emeryville round, of course, runs frequently. But the AC Transit that's over there now, it used to be the 57, went all the way out to the public market, but it ends at 40th and San Pablo now. I think the AC Transit buses that go through here are Trans-Bay buses, and I believe they only run during peak hour. I'm not sure exactly. Does it? Okay.
We can start this one.
Well, they turned down a Shellmound.
All right. So the 26 also is in this area. Yeah.
So I have a couple of questions. One is, are you planning on doing anything in this phase to enhance the access to the crossing over the railroad tracks? It's right at, you know, it's in the surface parking lot. Are you planning to do anything with paving or toning of concrete or something to make that a little bit more enticing, safer?
If this were at all legible, maybe I can do this. Right now, there's a sort of an odd diagonal that cuts across, and it crosses several drive lanes. And so what we're looking at is reconfiguring that to come into, basically, to hang a right here and come through a landscaped sidewalk area out to a curb, and then hit the series of raised crosswalks. So it still traverses some of the parking lot, but we're enhancing and we think clarifying that in a way that there should be fewer conflicts.
Yeah, and I noticed that in the future phase, that connection is in the middle of a residential building. Is that something that you've?
It's a kind of a matter of illustration. In the PDP, the anticipation was that the pedestrian would cross over the parking connection and down a set of monumental staircases. We're looking at something similar, including an elevator. And so the idea is you'd still traverse a public easement on the deck of a parking lot, come down a gracious open stair with an elevator. But in all honesty, it's
a future phase.
Yeah, it's a future phase. It was an earlier priority for the previous developer.
The other question I have about the future phase is the public park expansion, because it looks to me like we're losing park acreage, but you said that it's the same park acreage?
It is the same park acreage. It's a little bit geometry, but we've measured it. I mean, I guess the park was expanded by something like 3/10 or 3.5 of an acre, and so we're looking at a similar expansion and improvement.
Does this PDP include any improvements to the existing park along with the dedication of the park expansion?
You know, that's I always anticipated it did.
I believe the PDP, the PUD really called for a total redesign.
Okay,
Park.
good.
Yeah.
And
That's what we envisioned. Sorry, just to echo
Good.
that.
the 60-second sort of plaza courtyard is not being counted as part of the park, is it?
No,
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 that's
no.
totally
One
separate.
decision we collectively made was we would not split the park in any way between this green and some other green. So we're trying to get a connective park the size of the park that was described originally.
And the sidewalk widths on the Shellmound now, on both sides?
4 to 5 feet, right against the curb. They're privately owned. And
Yeah, but I mean on Shellmound.
we're proposing,
Yeah.
they vary from 16 to 20 feet in front of the market to 13 feet in front of the office building and 10 and a half feet. These are all dimensions clear of planting because the planting's been taken out of that. So
So the public right-of-way of existing Shellmound ends at back of curb?
18 inches beyond back of curb.
Oh, 18-inch. Oh, okay, so does that capture? Is that an attached walk? Does it capture 18 inches of the walk, or is there a planter strip, or what?
It captures 18 inches of attached walk.
Okay.
24? 24.
Okay.
18 inches from the back of the curb, 24 inches from the face of the curb. Sorry.
Okay.
It's 60 feet across.
Any further questions here? I guess we can close the meeting and, close this and open it to public comment.
I know you all were just waiting for me. So I'll start with, I'd like to let you know that we love the public market. We live across the street. I live at Pacific Park Plaza, Stephen Keller. And we like the area so much that John and I were married in Christie Park. Overall, I think the new plan is exciting, but I think it could be better. It seems suburban and very auto-centric to me. The new mix of uses being retail and residential only, again, makes Emeryville more of a bedroom community to San Francisco instead of a city unto itself. But into some of the details, I think it was very poor planning on the part of the developer and the city to have no community meeting prior to the study session. No one that I talked to in my building had any knowledge that this project was changing. Thus, they had no chance to voice their opinion before the commission makes their recommendations. You guys don't know how anyone feels in Pacific Park Plaza or the Christie Commons or Avenue 64. So I think that was very poor planning when the Avalon group could have a community meeting about something that's not around any houses, but this big project had no community meeting. Anyway, the removal of bike laning should not be an option. In reading through our many specific plans for the city, like the Climate Action Plan, the Shellmound Street Design Guidelines, the Bike Pedestrian Plan, the Sustainable Transportation Plan, and especially the city's general plan, I could not find in any of those plans where we support the removal of a Class 2 bike lane. As a bicyclist, I have the right to use any lane by law, and I'm not given that. I'm always under threat when I'm in a lane, and so having a dedicated bike lane wherever possible is very important. I think using the public realm for benefits such as the parklets is wrong. In a brand new development, public benefits should be part of and incorporated in the project site. We use parklets when we have no other choice and we want to take over a parking space. The project should not remove one benefit like bike lanes to create the other. Additionally, one benefit that should be mandatory for inclusion in the project is a connection to the pedestrian bridge, which they have just talked about. I think that's very important and needs to be part of the requirements of this plan. And number 4, improving any plans for the grocery store. Those plans must mandate that the protection of the neighborhood from the intensity of operations of a grocery store, not just the traffic coming to and from the grocery store, but the deliveries, the garbage collection, all the storage of pallets and et cetera, needs to be concealed and taken care of. All sides of this proposed store are exposed to the streets or to somebody's home. So it's very important that there's no back alley side of this building to perform the operations of a grocery store. And in that, the developer must clearly explain and ensure the operations will not harm the quality of life of the neighbors in the area. Unfortunately, about all the time I have right now, you guys have my 3-page written recommendations. The one other thing I think is 62nd Street should be closed as a plaza all the time and open only under emergencies. Thank you much.
Any further comments from the public? Please give your name and...
Hello, Ryan, homeowner with Emeryville for the past 7 years. Just, I guess, 3 comments. One is, I like it. I love the project. Second bullet point is, in regards to the grocery store, if I could recommend Fresh and Easy or Lenardi's would be great. Lastly, the last bullet point is they focus on restaurants, food, and whatnot. But living in Emeryville since 2007, I've noticed that the public market has diminished. My favorite Jamaican place is gone. My favorite Thai place is gone. But kind of refocus on, I don't know if this is the right platform to talk about it, but kind of refocus on getting more tenants there before we start building more, cafes or restaurants. But go back to our basics and get more tenants into public market. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any further comments? Close the meeting. Why don't we start over here?
Okay. I guess I'd like to start by saying I'm excited to have something happen there in the marketplace. And although I do understand your expression of that this we're going to have unique, sort of generally one-of-a-kind sorts of retail opportunities and food opportunities. Oftentimes, I'm not sure how that is going to work, because oftentimes that tends to be tenants that are not able to necessarily afford to be in a brand new space. So that is I'm not sure quite how to make that work in my mind. I think this looks a little bit suburban. It's definitely auto-oriented more than I would like to see. I would like to see this be much more of a forward-thinking project that is transit-oriented. Absolutely, we need bike lanes and not sharrows, in my opinion. And I can see how I'm afraid about to see the loss of office space potential, and at the same time, the marketplace is saying we don't have that need at this moment. So I'm not sure quite what that means in terms of the future of the project, but if there is some potential for that as a possibility later on in other phases. In terms of the food market, the grocery store, I'm looking at the elevations, and they are so for like the east and the north, they're absolutely not pedestrian friendly at all. And I'm not really even certain how another large supermarket is going to work in this space. And we have one right up the street, Berkeley Bowl West. We have one right the Trader Joe's. There is also the Safeway, Pack and Save in the area. So I'm not sure how that's going to work, as well as the amount of volume of traffic that it's going to create. So that's worrisome to me. The loading absolutely must be addressed completely on site. I would agree with that. It can be a real ugly issue if not addressed correctly. The circulation through the site seems tight, but it sounds like you're working to make sure that will actually work with DPW, et cetera. And I thought Commissioner Moss's comment about switching out the loading with the parking might actually be a way to help with that. It doesn't help with the facade of the building. Also, speaking of facades, the parking structure along the railway absolutely needs to be addressed in terms of it being screened and not open. Doesn't have to be completely screened, but it needs to, we do not want to look at cars. Or advertisements. I think in terms of the PUD, I guess I could, with the removal of office space, I guess with hesitation, I could support that. And I'm sure there's more things, but for now, that's all I've got.
I guess, first of all, I just want to disclose that I did meet with the applicant before this meeting to review the plans. So to continue with my comments, as far as the issue of the review of the PDP versus the FDP, it's a little bit cuspy to me, but I've decided for a variety of reasons that I think it does fall within the existing PDP, and that it would be appropriate for us to review FDPs moving forward. That said, I do want to give, even though we're sort of only reviewing this first phase of it, I do want to give some comments about the overall project, because I think that will be helpful to the applicant, because I do have some sort of comments about overall. So anyway, I'll get to that. So as far as bikes, I agree with what Commissioner Coomerly has said, and what one of the public speakers said. I think super sharrows are great, a great tool, a great device if you're retrofitting an existing road. But we're building a new road, and we've got, a ton of space to work with. I appreciate that you're building. There are certain depths that work for your building, but I think we still have some flexibility. So I really would like to see Class 2 bike lanes. I really would like to see safe Class 2 bike lanes. I'm a little concerned about the relationship between the proposed on-street parking and bike lanes, because I think that is one of the things that was not done well at the portion of the Marketplace renovation that already happened near Urban Outfitters and Guitar Center. There was on-street parking that was added, and the bike lane width was left the same, and it really creates a dangerous bike lane. So I would like to see one of two things, which is either that some sort of appropriate buffer be given between the bike lane and the parked cars to improve safety for bicyclists and prevent them from getting doored. Or alternately, I guess you could do a buffered bike lane adjacent to the curb. That might be worth exploring as well, if that was appropriately buffered. Or alternately, just the removal of the proposed on-street parking. I think that's really critical that street is safe for bicyclists. I do, however, love the idea of parklets in some of those on-street parking locations. So wouldn't necessarily want to give that up, but I think, and I do appreciate also that on-street parking actually provides a really nice buffer for pedestrians. It really does change the pedestrian experience on a street, but I think you can also mitigate some of that with appropriate placement of street furniture and landscaping to also buffer pedestrians from the street. Let's see, the park. Yeah, that park geometry is interesting. It doesn't look the same size. I believe you, but it doesn't appear to be.
Well, they took the retail out.
Yeah, no, I see that. It's sort of an optical illusion, I think, and I'm not sure about it. I think that I like the original park configuration better. I think I would definitely want to see how the park was going to interact with that proposed building and a lot of things, because I'm uncertain about it.
Yeah, well,
let's see, the uses. Oh, yeah. I also am saddened to see all of the office space disappear. I do think that it's a really, I mean, I appreciate your struggles in leasing your existing office space. I don't know if that has anything to do with the, you know, the age of that space or the type of that space. But it does seem like there's a lot of synergy here with the uses across the railroad tracks. There's a bridge, which is a rare amenity, a really important one. And I think if we were going to approve something that contained no office space, I would, again, definitely want to see some data and some information that helped support that change. So let's see. The new retail and parking building, I also have concerns. I also echo the staff's concerns and Commissioner Coomerly's concerns. I do think it needs to, the elevation against the railroad tracks needs to be addressed. It needs to be aesthetically pleasing. But I'm actually going to go a little further. I think the elevation facing relocated Shellmound Street needs to be better. I think it needs to not look like retail storefronts with a parking structure above it. I'm not entirely sure how you accomplish that. I actually would sort of look to Commissioner Gunkel and anybody else who has any ideas about it. I mean, my initial thoughts are, I mean, I know we don't want to, I know a lot of people don't want to use Bay Street as a model, but I think this is one thing that Bay Street did sort of right, is that when you walk along Bay Street, there are places where you can see bits of the parking structure, but you don't really notice it because there are other uses above that ground floor that look like buildings and not parking. And so I know you don't have that here, and I don't know that I want to require you to put other uses along the frontage of that building along the street. But at the same time, I think maybe you could continue some of the, there are certain architectural elements that make a commercial storefront look like a commercial storefront, and I think maybe you could continue some of those elements upwards onto the upper portions of that building, so that it might feel, I don't want it to look like a fake building either. I'm not talking about faux windows and things like that, but maybe if you continued some of those vertical elements, it would share more form with a building, rather than look like a ground floor with a big mass, above it that might be screened in some sort of pleasing way, but still doesn't really look like an active building. I'm a little bit concerned. The architect mentioned the block length being 1,000 feet. I'm a little bit concerned that's a little long without any sort of breaks in it. I'm not saying that, I realize you've got the existing building. I'm not saying that there needs to be, a circulation break or anything like that, but when you look at the approved PDP, there's a little bit more articulation and interest in the buildings. So along relocated Shellmound Street, there's some areas that I'm imagining. So there's where the pedestrian bridge comes in, and that staircase, and then there's other little areas that I'm sort of imagining would maybe be sort of plaza areas, and I think that type of respite, that type of break in the building frontage can really make a difference in the feel of that walkable street, and I will just finish by saying I love the idea of a grocery store. I think that's awesome. I will surely shop there. I personally, since I've moved to Emeryville, I've watched our grocery options in the East Bay dramatically improve. When I moved here, any grocery store that sold any sort of like natural organic products had lines out the door, and that's not necessarily the case anymore. But I still am not satisfied with our grocery options, and I would love more. And I think that's the type of use that really will serve residents and will serve the daily needs of our community. And so I really applaud you for that. One last question, or one last comment. What is it? Proposed 62nd Street. I question the need for that as auto circulation. It seems very superfluous. It doesn't access anything. It doesn't go anywhere. I think I would rather see it as a plaza full time. It just doesn't. It doesn't seem like cars need to use that. So that concludes my comments.
Well, I must agree. I'd be delighted to see the grocery store here, and I thought they've done a very good job of figuring out how to cover and hide the delivery area as much as possible. I do think the turning radiuses are going to have to be studied a little more. My biggest and really only serious objection is the new parking building, and the fact that it reduces the size of Shellmound Street and also puts in a steeper or more sharp turn at the north end. And I think that building has to be restudied so that it's shallower. And I'm sure there are different things that could be done. I don't object to the way the parking area above the retail was screened. I think that was rather creative, but I think it also needs to go around all sides of the building so that, this is a major railroad place, and people look at that stuff. And you can see it at the terraces. It looks terrible. So that's my comment.
Okay, parking garage. I personally like the screen and think you can do all kinds of creative stuff with it, but I do think that the garage needs some kind of screening on the backside too, because it isn't the backside to the people on the other side of the railroad tracks, so that needs to continue around. I think I'm really glad to see that there has been some thought to improving the connection to the bridge across the tracks. I mean, clearly, I live right across on the other side, so I use the bridge, and it's a really kind of a grim place now, but that needs to be kept really in the forefront when anything is going forward in the future phases. I'm also concerned about how the new Parcel E building relates to the different way that the park's being configured. That makes me I think that park has not related to things around it for a long time, and whatever is designed there needs to really carefully be interfacing with that park space. So I know that that's a future phase, but that's something that leapt out at me. I agree with everybody that the bike lanes are probably safer than a Sharrow bike lane. And I think that a number of the things that you have done here with trying to do the Sharrow, doing the parklets, are things that as somebody I think said, you do when you're retrofitting a place that already has limited space. And if you're starting from scratch and building something new, I would rather see some kind of little indentations or some kind of openings along the building facade that gave that some relief and made seating areas on that side, rather than taking away on-street parking and putting people on a street just because that seems like it's been cool in San Francisco. I understand that it seems to me that probably part of the reason that the Marketplace isn't leased out is because of the age of the building and the way the building looks and the way the entries work and all that kind of stuff. So there probably, I think that there probably is more of a market for office, but I'm not concerned enough about that to say that the PDP doesn't, that this proposal is not compatible with the previous proposal. I think that there are a lot of office spaces around Emeryville that are filling that need at this point. I'm glad to see you got the bus stops in, which weren't in the drawings before. And I'm going to be interested to see what the supplemental traffic reports say about the circulation, about the angles of the road bending, and about just the volume of traffic that's going to be feeding through there, because a lot of people at commute times get on and off at Shellmound, at that Ashby-Shellmound intersection, and there is a lot of traffic that funnels through that way, so it'll be interesting to see what they say about that.
Okay, so first I'll just say that with regard to this new plan being in conformance or substantially in conformance with the 2008 plan, I think that overall that it is. I don't see a reason to say that it isn't in total, so I don't have any real objections there. I want to just focus my comments on, again, things that were not touched on or not as much before. In general, I'm in agreement with most of what the other commissioners have stated. The thing I would like to focus on is really that this project is very important to our town, and I am a bit surprised that we are seeing it at this stage and have not had more community outreach, and I really think it's going to be important that take place in the very near future. I would really like to see what our community thinks of the design. I would like for them to have the opportunity to provide input on the design of the plaza, just the overall elements of the design, and also the mix of uses. So I just want to really emphasize that. The other point is, so later on this evening we're going to be conducting another study session. I think if we should be able to do that before we have to close, on a transit study. And this is the kind of project that I think that many people in the town will want to come to. I mean, that's the idea of it being successful. And I think it's going to be important for this project to really be closely coordinated with those discussions that we're having about transit in the East Bay. Because what we're seeing is that the places that people want to go are very difficult to get to without a car. And so I think that's going to be very critical for this project. So I wanted to just emphasize that. As far as design elements, again, I want to say that the plaza design, I think there needs to be just more. I think it would be great for that plaza to be a private road with basically closed to traffic. I don't really see the benefit of that short street really having traffic flowing through it. And I think that it would also serve as a better way to draw people to the place and to take advantage of the amenities there. With regard to the commercial being eliminated, I think that that's kind of something that I'm struggling with. I would prefer to see some commercial because I think that it will support whatever retail or grocery or cafe that is going there. I think it's going to be necessary during the daytime and outside of evenings and weekends where you'll have residents frequenting those areas more. And then I wanted to touch on the grocery store because I kind of share the same concern that Commissioner Moss was voicing, and I do a lot of grocery shopping. We have a family of 4, and our options are very limited. I mean, we go to literally 3 different stores. We go to Pack and Save, we go to Berkeley Bowl, we go to Costco, and we have a CSA box delivered every week. Because we are on a budget, we have a family, we eat out maybe 2 or 3 times a month. We cook at home, organic. We really want to have, more options for grocery shopping. So I thought that this was a positive part of the project, but again, I think it's going to need to have the support of some of the daytime uses of retail as well during the week, during the day. So let's see if I had anything else. Again, really just emphasizing coordinating with the transit aspect that we're really studying very closely in our town. I mean, this area is very congested in terms of traffic. And so it would be great to ensure that this project has more ability to support public transit, biking, walking, and that's it.
I guess I'm still a little confused about, looking at this, it seems like it is a pretty significant change to the PUD. we're moving buildings around, getting rid of uses, changing shell mounds, routing and size, but I might be the minority, and so instead of going down that path, I'm just going to spend some time talking about the specifics, since this is, I guess, our study session, and then the next time we're seeing this, it'll be for approval. And so I think one of the things that I see, and I did meet with the developer at one point to review the plan, and I think that the sharper angle on Shellmound, not only is it a traffic concern and safety concern, but it also, the shallower angle, what it did was open up the building behind what's now going, proposed as the grocery store, to the Marketplace sort of street. And as a result, you're no longer getting that visual connection from that building down the market, down Shellmound. And now that building's proposed to be a residential building, I'm concerned about it. I already see the new building that's being built in that area back there with the private streets. It sort of feels like an artificial town or downtown kind of approach. The streets don't feel real or utilized. It feels like it's tucked in the back. And I feel like this residential building at Parcel D is going to feel the same way, and even maybe more so, being back behind the grocery store and not having that visual connection down Shellmound. So I'd actually like, the other concern that I had was putting the parking on the roof of the grocery store. So basically all the residents in Parcel D who are facing south are going to be looking down, basically looking out on the parking lot on the roof of the grocery store. And it just seemed like the opportunity here was really to shift the grocery store to the west, to remove the little restaurant or cafe, and have a bridge or walkway over to the garage that would then provide the parking for the grocery store. And then that way you could, kill a few birds with one stone by straightening out Shellmound some, creating that visual connection between the residential building and the sort of retail corridor, and also that could, with avoiding having the ramp as part of the grocery store, all of a sudden you can start to open up the backside of the grocery store with windows, so that it doesn't feel like the residential at Parcel D is facing the backside of the grocery store. And then just kind of following up on some of the other comments, I don't know exactly the best way to approach the garage, but it does feel, as Commissioner Moss mentioned, it feels like there's a garage that's screened over top of retail, and the screening is, it's an approach that's done a lot in sort of mall type areas. And so an approach that's maybe more honest might be the way to go, where you actually just can acknowledge it's a garage, but do a nice job of doing it, and carry elements that are on the ground floor all the way to the top, and just make those nice elements. And then just getting into, if we are going to be looking at this entire set here, some of the things that I saw were, I did see, I saw a nice trash receptacle, and then I saw some plastic-looking trash receptacle, and I don't know what I saw nice light fixtures, and then I saw some cheaper-looking light fixtures, and I wasn't sure which ones were going where, what the intent was. I like the nice ones. I saw, glue-down tactile domes, and I prefer tiles, or even I've recently seen wrought iron or metal tactile domes that were really nice, and you're already using that element in other components of the design, so that could be nice. The use of the reclaimed bricks is nice. I'm not such a fan of the ceramic tile on portions of the retail. I felt like the 440-foot long span of retail with very little movement in and out. I know you're trying to differentiate it with some materials, but even then, the pattern is pretty consistent. So you're just getting column, storefront, column, storefront for 440 feet, and to actually have some movement in and out of that retail would be nice, and then have that somehow reflected also in the treatment of the sidewalk. And then, you know, I do agree with the other commissioners who have mentioned having the plaza just be, frankly, more of a private or a closed-off plaza most of the time. Private road, 63rd Street private road, you know, putting some more, right now I can't tell if there's any street trees or any landscaping on that road, but again, treating that like a road and not just a sort of driveway parking access will help make Parcel D come alive more. So those are just some of my comments.
Charlie, do you have enough comments?
Well, that sounds, first of all, let me say that on the threshold question of whether or not this conforms to the PUD, I'm hearing a majority of you say that you feel that it is. So that's good news, I think, in terms of the processing of this application. I'm hearing a lot of concerns about design issues. Unless I missed something, I don't think I've heard any major disagreements between the commissioners on any key points. I've heard consensus about bike lanes. I think I've heard consensus that 62nd Street Plaza should just be a plaza. And heard some design concerns expressed about both the garage building and the grocery store building. Anything else significant that do you think I missed, Miru? I think those are the main things that I heard. I think we have good direction.
I do have
the wider street and bike lanes.
Right.
In the park.
Yeah, I do want to follow up on some of Commissioner Gunkel's comments, and I think that they were really, really good comments about the views as you're going along Shellmound. What that bend in the road does is it points you straight at the parking garage, and I know that you have some retail frontage on the north side of the parking garage, but that needs to be looked at really, really carefully. You're also going along the back side of the grocery store, and with a four-sided exposed grocery store, I know you've got some challenges, but we really need to try to make all of those sides work well. And also, those residences that are going to be looking at the back side of the garage really need to be all of those frontages really need to be very, very carefully designed. And I did also want to say I do appreciate the approach that you're trying to go for in terms of the smaller scale retail and specialty, you know, marketing to specialty vendors that will come and make this a place that isn't like every other Panera Bread and Starbucks and everything else. That's something that I really look forward to seeing. And I know the Marketplace has been trying to do that with Hot Italian and places like that already, and I'm glad to see that's the theme that's going forward.
Yeah, I think just to sort of follow up on that, I think that the screening of the loading area for the grocery store is going to be critical. I think we want whatever treatment is there to look really nice to the point where you don't know that there's a loading dock there. I had two other comments, one of which is I think generally I want to offer some praise for the types of furniture and finishes and materials that you're proposing. And I've actually, I meant to say this in the last study session, but I noticed the applicant is still here, so that's great. I think those are the types of, generally speaking, I think those are the types of materials and finishes we would like to see on most projects. So I'm sure your architect is very talented as well, but maybe, you know, maybe your design team should have lunch with their design team or something. And I had one other comment, and I can't remember what it is. Sorry.
I also neglected to mention I did meet with the applicant as well, so I just want to put that on record.
So did I.
Oh, I just remembered my other comment, which was that I think the approved PDP does a really good job of hiding the parking so that it's not an outward-facing elevation. So I think anything you can do to sort of address that would definitely be appreciated. From my perspective anyway. No, I mean if you look at the existing PDP, all the parking is behind things. It's behind other uses which are going to act as the building facade for the upper floors. So I think they did a really great job doing that here. So that's something I would like to see carried forward in the new plans.
I mean, in my comments about this, questioning whether this is in conformance with the approved PUD, I mean, and frankly, in a lot of respects, I think this is an improvement on it. But I do feel like the grocery store and the way that it's being treated is the item that needs the most adjustment. And again, I mean, when we're talking about the loading of the entire marketplace right now is on this strip that runs between Shellmound and Christie. And so just the ability, I mean, shifting, again, that possibility of shifting the grocery store to the west, you could pick up the loading on that same street that all the other loading occurs on. And then also straighten out Shellmound. And I just still, if you straighten out Shellmound, you could extend the garage even a little bit further to the north, and then by connecting that over to the grocery store with a bridge, again, you'd be able to open up the back of the grocery store so it isn't all about the ramp for the garage.
I noticed in the earlier plan they have a trellis covering the parking structure along the railroad track. That could be done on top of the grocery store also.
You mean on top of the parking that's on top of the parking of grocery store?
Yeah.
Put some kind of a trellis around it or over it?
Over it.
Yeah.
I might also add that moving the grocery store to the west takes this another step out of the realm of the anchor store at the mall feeling, which is kind of what it's happening right now. So that would be good. Be more like a street.
And the cafe might be nice on the corner of Shellmound where it bends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Switch the two.
All right.
I think that's it.
Go on to the next item.
Thank you.
Thank you.